As much as everyone loves a futuristic sci-fi epic or a fantastical trip to another world, there's nothing quite like playing a game that puts you right at the heart of a pivotal period of humanity's history. Part of the appeal of a historical game is the chance to inhabit a time outside of your own, an opportunity to live in a world that you've only ever read about in textbooks. To make this happen, developers need to be very careful not to make any mistakes that might take players out of this digital trip back in time. Unfortunately though, you can't get every little detail right. For this list then, we're looking at errors made in games that were trying to be as accurate as possible. We're not counting games that take place in an alternate timeline, so there'll be no Wolfenstein The New Order or Resistance Fall of Man here, and equally we're not taking the low road and filling this list with games that are obviously taking liberties with history. My sincerest apologies to Dino D-Day. Is that all clear? Okay, good. I'm Peter from Triple Jump, and here are 10 massive historical inaccuracies in video games. Number 10. Too many oxen. The Oregon Trail. If you grew up in America in the 1980s, firstly, you're old, and secondly, you might have spent some time playing the Oregon Trail. Designed to help teach children about the lives of 19th century pioneer travelers, the original Oregon Trail from 1971 spawned a series of sequels and spin-offs covering other areas of history. There's yet to be a British version of the game though, presumably because nobody thought the journey up the M1 trail would sell very well. Alongside funny epitaphs and jokes about dysentery, one of the main features of the series is the number of oxen you come across. These cow-like creatures are everywhere, but mainly as part of your posse helping to carry people and supplies through the countryside. Alas, real-world Oregon trailers wouldn't have been this fortunate. Whilst oxen were the best and cheapest animal substitute for this journey, many pioneers used horses, mules, or just carried stuff by hand. The idea that everyone had a friendly ox to accompany them on their journey like some sort of Pokemon simply isn't true. Although now I do want a version of the Oregon Trail where you can have ox battles with your friends. Number 9. Multicultural London. Assassin's Creed Syndicate. With 12 mainline installments taking place across Earth's history, the team behind the extraordinary Assassin's Creed franchise were never going to get everything right, as much as Ubisoft and players would have liked them to. We could have picked on any title from AC's long history, to be honest, but the game we're focusing on is the 9th one in the series, 2015's Syndicate. Unlike the Oregon Trail, this is a franchise that did pay the UK a visit, as Syndicate is set in the grimy world of Victorian London. Oh, core blimey, governor, apples and pears, Mary Poppins and all that. Whilst the London landscape is nicely recreated in the game, there's one thing that's a little bit wrong with it. The people. Syndicate barely features any people of colour in it, despite the fact that Victorian London would have been awash with visitors from all across the British Empire, which at the time included numerous countries in North Africa and the Caribbean, as well as India. Also, where are all the foreign traders? London was one of the biggest trade cities in the world. Right, that's it. I'm off down the rubber dub. That's the pub, in case you were wondering. Number 8. The Red Army. Call of Duty. Initially focused on World War II, the Call of Duty series now includes the Modern Warfare and Black Ops sub-series, which cover a wider range of 20th and 21st century conflicts, because shooting people in the face shouldn't just be reserved for the 1940s. In its early days, players could take control of soldiers fighting for various different strains of the Allied powers, and the first title offered up the chance to play as a British, American, or Soviet soldier, although it went out of its way to put people off choosing that last one. The Red Army, which was the Soviet Union's fighting force and not a group of football fans, is constantly displayed as being incompetent or underprepared throughout Call of Duty. Soviet soldiers charge into battle without weapons, whilst officers berate their men for no good reason. It's a miracle none of them were shown falling over into a big muddy puddle with a slide whistle playing in the background. In reality, the Red Army was much more organised and well equipped. I mean, they held off the Nazis for crying out loud. Although with that said, the stark winters may have helped them with that. Number 7. Weaponry mistakes. Battlefield 1. Released in 2016, Battlefield 1 is rather unhelpfully not the first game in the Battlefield series, but is in fact the 10th. I don't know why video game developers keep doing this. Despite its confusing name though, the game did quite well with critics and players alike, the latter of whom were keen to play through its World War I themed campaign mode, presumably because they were so sick to the back teeth of shooters set in World War II. Hitler was bad, we get it already! One group who were less pleased with the game, however, were historians, who found plenty to nitpick when it came to Battlefield 1's weaponry design. Several guns that were fitted with a bayonet attachment, i.e. big old pointy knives on the end of their barrels, simply wouldn't have had them in real life. Complaints were also leveled at the amount of on-foot combat that a player will see throughout the game's runtime. Famously, a lot of fighting in World War I was trench-based, so the odds of actually getting to shoot somebody up close were slim to none. God, it's like the team at DICE had never even seen Blackadder. Amateurs. Number 6. Interfaith Marriages, Europa Universalis 4. Europa Universalis 4 is, as the name might suggest, the fourth installment of the Europa Universalis series, which was initially based on a French board game called Europa Universalis. I've now said those two words so many times, I never want to hear them ever again. Just hope I'm pronouncing them properly. The object of this grand strategy title is to guide your chosen nation over hundreds of years, overcoming various historical challenges that are thrown your way. Like most strategy games, EU4 has lots of different details that affect how a player's story will turn out. So many details, in fact, that I can feel my brain starting to liquefy just looking at this. Oh my god. Players can form marriage alliances with other countries, except they're not allowed to do this with nations of a different religion. Now you might think that was normal during the early modern period of history, which is where EU4 begins, but marriages between couples of differing religions weren't as uncommon as you'd think. There's plenty of historical evidence to show that this sort of thing happened quite regularly, which is quite progressive if you think about it, although these marriages were probably just to get the male party onto the throne, so maybe they weren't that forward-thinking after all. Number 5. The Portrayal of Egypt, Rome Total War. Rome Total War, part of the larger Total War series of strategy games, was released for PC in 2004 and chucked players headfirst into a time of togas, laurel wreaths, and everyone having a name that ended in us. It's up to you to split your time between managing the Empire's economy and conducting battles against your enemies, making sure that one of the most important and famous civilizations of all time doesn't crumble. No pressure then. It's not just Rome you have to deal with though, as several other territories crop up across the game. One of them is Egypt, and unfortunately, it seems the devs didn't go to any trouble trying to make the land of the pharaohs historically accurate. The Egyptian army is kitted out with weapons that would, by the time the game is set, have been centuries out of date, such as chariots, which had fallen out of fashion years prior, along with the inclusion of infantry axemen and traditional phalanxes that would give anybody with an Egyptology degree a minor heart attack. These decisions were clearly taken to just make the game more visually pleasing, but if you're going to use Rome Total War to study for history class, don't expect to get a good grade. Number 4. Playboy, Mafia 2. Some more recent history now as we take a look at a game all about the naughty world of organised crime. Mafia 2, the sequel to the very successful 2002 title Mafia, is all about life in the seedy underbelly of Empire Bay, a city designed to incorporate all the best bits of classic gangster movies in one place. New York, Chicago, Boston, San Francisco, you name it, Empire Bay has got it. You might think that setting the game in a fictional city might avoid it running into any issues of faithfulness, but you would be wrong. Publishers 2K entered into a partnership with your dad's favourite magazine, Playboy, for this game, and as a result, players can find issues of the mag scattered around Empire Bay as collectibles. There's just one problem with this, and it's quite a big one. Mafia 2 is set between the years 1945 and 1951, but the first issue of Hugh Hefner's celebration of female nudity wasn't published until 1953. This means that the magazines in the game shouldn't exist at all unless Hef was actually a time traveler the whole time. And what a horrible thought that is. Number 3. The Intolerance set, LA Noire. No fake cities this time, just a very nice recreation of Los Angeles in the 1940s. LA Noire from Team Bondi and everyone's favourite Mad Lads Rockstar was released in 2011 and received all kinds of accolades, particularly for its timely presentation of the City of Angels. But as you should know by now, even the most accurate games can make huge mistakes. The film Intolerance was released in 1916 and is widely considered to be one of the most influential silent movies ever made. Enormous lavish sets were created for it, which were so impressive that some were only demolished 3 years later. That would be in 1919 then, not 1947. LA Noire features a gunfight taking place on the famous Babylon set from Intolerance, which would have been gone for almost 3 decades in the real world. The team behind the game actually acknowledged this error, saying it was done as a, quote, nod to this great piece of Hollywood history. And I say, quote, that's not good enough. Now, developers, I want you to remake the entire game so it's completely accurate, and I'm not going anywhere until you do it. Okay, fine, I am going somewhere. To number 2. Number 2, a whole bunch of stuff, Kingdom Come: Deliverance. When it comes to historical realism in games, few titles are as controversial as the 2018 action role-playing title Kingdom Come: Deliverance. Developed by Warhorse Studios and directed by Daniel Vavra, accuracy and the truth were at the forefront of this game's creation process and marketing strategy. Unfortunately, this opened up several rather unpleasant debates. Deliverance, which is set in 15th century Bohemia, modern-day Czechia, has a very white cast of characters, and whilst the developers responded to this by saying that this would have been the case at the time, this isn't wholly true. The role of women in the game was also scrutinised, as was the presentation of the Cuman and Hungarian people, who were depicted as cruel conquerors against the valiant Czech defenders. Basically, in attempting to make a historically accurate game, all the team behind Kingdom Come: Deliverance did was open themselves up to criticism. The backlash to the title and the response from those involved just goes to show that maybe getting all the facts right shouldn't be a massive priority, and if you are going to aim for historical accuracy, perhaps you shouldn't shout so loudly about it. And number 1, the wrong year, 1943, the Battle of Midway. Let's end on a silly one, shall we? 1942 was a popular arcade cabinet developed by Capcom, and it was so successful that it got a sequel 3 years later called 1943, The Battle of Midway. Much like in the first game, the objective was to take on the Japanese air fleet during World War II. As you might expect, the combat is based on the real-life Battle of Midway, a major naval skirmish that took place in the Pacific Theatre. That's what that area of the sea was called. They didn't just go and catch a matinee. Unfortunately though, for fans of things being correct, the actual Battle of Midway did not take place in 1943, but instead took place in 1942. Wait, hang on, that's what the first game was called. Interestingly, the game 1942 was also based on the same battle, so why wasn't that one given the subtitle instead of the sequel? And why couldn't the studio behind the games find another historical clash to name the follow-up after? Ultimately, this moniker misstep has no effect on how the game plays, but it is funny that all Capcom had to do to avoid getting this wrong was to change a single number.